listening to Money Matters with Mike. And now, our host, Treasurer Michael Gustin.
We'll try that again. So, yeah, as I said, we're kind of shaking out things as we go here. Those of you who watch Just Ask Jen, our previous financial channel, will notice the set's a little bit different here. So we are moving to more of a podcast format this year, and I think there's some good things about that. So one thing we'll do is we'll ask our technician back there, Rob, to tell people how they can participate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. To be able to participate today, you're going to see us on Facebook. Feel free to click the hand icon. I'm sorry, it's Facebook, not the hand icon, but go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and we'll respond and we'll share them with the group here on the show, and then we will make sure that you become a part of the show.
Thank you, Rob. So a couple other things about our new format. I think we're going to be excited. We're going to have more conversations. Yeah, we had some great conversations, I think, before. I think you've both participated before and had some really deep conversations. One thing that's nice about this format is we can have more guests. I know Ms. Bolton remembers being up on stage, and you can fit 4 people on our stage. And so one of the hopes is that we can bring people in and out as we go through, and so you don't have to commit for the whole hour. I mean, you guys have to commit for the whole hour because you're here, but I also think it allows different perspectives and allows us, for an example, like if we're talking about school budgets, we can start at a principal level, but we could also bring a parent up to have a conversation. We could bring a student up to have a conversation. So it allows us to increase the breadth of what we're doing. The other thing we're doing that's kind of new is episodes that build on one another. So some topics are more than an hour's worth of work. And I think definitely school funding is one of those. If you'll go to the next slide, Rob. Oh, sorry, forgot one. Key financial conversation. So as a treasurer, there's 3 things I think about. Revenue, expenses, and cash balances. Those are the things that are always in the front of my mind. I know Mr. Crossett, you worked as a CFO for a while, so you probably have a similar.
Oh yeah, everything starts with revenue.
Starts with revenue, ends with expenses. So,
Right.
And I know Ms. Bolton's been monitoring our finances for quite some
very long time. Very long time, and we've actually done very, very well with the previous treasurer and now with you and a number of board members over a number of years. We're really proud of where we kind of rank regarding our fiscal responsibility, and I know you'll continue that.
Yes, we've done a great job. We should, over with the board's leadership and former treasurers, we've done a great job of running the district, keeping the finances in a good spot. We will be next board meeting presenting our new forecast. So you guys will get to see kind of a preview of what the next 4 years look like. Financially, that's always good. So one thing is these 3 topics seem pretty small, but when you expand them out, they get really big. So if you expand out, for example, revenues, you'll see there's a lot to revenue, right? So there's local funds, there's state aid, there's federal funds. I think we've had conversations about all of those things very recently, very, very, very recently from the federal funds and the withholding of that, and having to file a lawsuit to get the money that was entitled to our district. We talk a lot about state aid all the time, and then obviously we talk a lot about our local funds. Our property taxes. We also talk about abatements. I mean, there's a lot. The point is there is a lot of pieces in any of these big buckets.
I think the kind of the reference would be that it is a puzzle, and you have an idea of what the outline of the puzzle might be, but the pieces can be different, and it's so hard to fit them together in a reasonable way and do so in a transparent and I think efficient way. So it is a puzzle every year, and that to have to plan it out more than just the year, but to plan it for a future and think strategically. The puzzle gets harder and harder.
I think also You guys do a good job of keeping on top of all the different revenue sources and where they are in terms of whether or not they're gonna come in or not and how much they're gonna come in for. So when it comes time to solve the puzzle, you've got good data to do it, and that's very important.
I would say one thing about the puzzle is you are constantly learning. So, the most recent learning was about the federal appropriation cycle. Which was it's not something they teach you when you go through the state treasury thing, but it's something we had to learn because of all the back and forth about, the federal title funds. And yeah, as Ms. Bolton said, it's a puzzle. And some pieces are bigger some years, some pieces are bigger other years. And so fitting all of them in to get the district the resources it needs.
And the big worry is that some of these puzzle pieces won't be there you can even finish the puzzle. And that's the most recent piece for me that is actually, problematic. That maybe there won't be a particular grant for particular kids or a particular cohort of kids. I mean, we've always at least had the pieces, but now the pieces and the number of the pieces are actually in question.
Yes, I mean, there was a time when the question was, how much would a certain revenue stream be? And you were within 5%, right? Like in a good year, it might be 5% higher, or bad, you might be 5% lower. Yeah, what you're talking about is complete elimination of revenue. We sit here on October 1st. The federal government is in a shutdown. The state government, the state Senate today, which I think we'll talk about.
Oh, yes.
We should talk about that. Did a veto override today. That was breaking news. And the governor's tax reform task force. Sorry, thank you. Released their recommendations a couple of days ago, or actually yesterday. So all those things are breaking news. And all those impact our ability to do our job to teach the kids. So, and that is one little piece of this revenue puzzle. And we have similar puzzles for expenses. We have similar puzzles for cash balances.
Talk a little bit about the veto.
Sure. So if we go back to the budget bill. So at the end of the time when the House and the Senate, the State House and the State Senate working the budget, they came to a compromise through the conference committee. And part of the budget that people don't understand for Ohio is not only is it we're going to spend X amount of dollars on X thing, there are also policy things inside the budget. So the budget's used as a vehicle to enact new policies. Many of those were very detrimental to school districts, and they were based on the concept of property tax reform. So legislatures are hearing, their constituents say, we're tired of property taxes. It's not a big stretch to look at your property tax and see most of that money goes to the schools. So the easy way to reduce property taxes is to reduce funds to schools. It's not good. It's not the good way to do it. It causes you long-term things. So to go back to your question. So in that budget bill, there were a number of provisions that made it harder for schools to raise funds. Changing, I won't go too deep, changing how the 20 mil floor is calculated, putting a carryover provision, how much money you can carry from year to year, getting rid of certain types of levies. The Governor DeWine, when he signed the budget, used his line item veto powers and vetoed, I think, 67 items. Many of those items were ones that would have directly impacted the schools. At the same time, he asked for the task force to be created. So he created the task force, and we can talk about that as well. After that, the House voted in late July, to override one of the vetoes, and it sat until today. The Senate is now back. The way the legislature works is they pass the budget, they take kind of a recess, they come back. The Senate's back today. They concurred with the veto override the House had already done.
And what's the impact?
What that means for us is we can no longer levy what are called emergency levies. So, and this will be effective starting January 1st. So, and emergency levies are any fixed sum levy that we put on the ballot. So, for example, the renewal we have in November is a fixed sum levy. So we can do that because we're before January 1st. But any future renewal of a fixed sum levy, we have two more. I think the next one's up in 2029. We're going to have to convert that into a different type of levy, a fixed rate levy. And then if we want to use a fixed sum levy in the future, we can't because that's no longer something that's permissible by law.
Good to know. Thank you, Bob, for that. I guess in a way, it forces us to raise money in a way that would have some component that would account for inflation, or not?
No, the only real way we can raise money that accounts for inflation is through doing an income tax. Every other tool has some limitations. So the nice thing about a fixed sum levy it's very easy to talk about it because it raises the same amount of money every single year. So if we go out and we get the voters to give us, a $50 million levy for 5 years, we know every year we're getting that amount of money. And it's very easy to say we're using that for this specific purpose or this specific program. It's very easy to track that. It's very easy to talk about that. A standard levy, is actually going to decrease in collection, a fixed rate levy. As property values go up, House Bill 920, which is passed years and years ago, is going to take those values down. So the idea of the property tax system in Ohio really is level funding. Unfortunately, the way the world works is everything is more expensive every year. And so that is one of the cruxes of the issues we have.
So does that mean that the new way that we might have to do that means less revenue over time?
Yes, and it means less revenue over time and probably more frequent times of us going back to the taxpayers.
So the fatigue is not being addressed because we're going to be doing that more. And what we had when we say emergency, these were never necessarily emergency, it was just a term of art. But does this change how we have to go about for in the very near future?
It changes anything we have to do after November. So anything we have to do after this November, we have to change, for sure.
Okay.
The other part of your question, I was trying to get back to.
It's not an emergency.
Yes. The name emergency is what's written into law, and I think it is confusing for taxpayers. One of the recommendations from the budget or from the property tax task force was to get rid of the emergency levy, but create a fixed sum levy. That's really what we're doing.
Okay.
And because I do think people say this is an emergency, you're on your second renewal. You're asking for 10 years. Like what emergency lasts 10 years? And that's a very legitimate point. But really it's about us using the law that's established and the terminology that's available for us to put something out to our taxpayers that they can understand and support.
Is a continuing levy still an option?
Yes, you can do a continuing levy.
So that might be a strategy to avoid the exhaustion of going to the ballot all the time, if you can get one passed.
Yes, I do not know the last time we passed a continuing levy. It's been a while.
Part of the reason for that is particularly in southwestern Ohio, in Hamilton County in particular, people like to hold us accountable. And that's the problem I think that they have with passing a continuing, is that people think that, oh, wait, I'm not going to be able to hold you accountable. I don't think that's as big a problem in other parts of the state, but down here where it's very conservative, what is it? We have more per person, per population, more savings and loans than any place, anywhere. Or it's the only county, the urban county in the United States of America that never once voted for Franklin Roosevelt with 4 times. So, and we're proud of that, but what can I say? Continuing might scare people.
Yeah,
At least it's still an option.
I think it's a great option. I think it's the most reasonable option.
Right.
Yes, I think, historically, as long as I've been here, we've done 5 years. And we started in the last couple of years looking at a 10-year to end that levy fatigue. Because as you were saying, we were getting to the point where we were on the ballot for renewal 3 of every 4 years.
Yeah.
And there's fatigue to that. And people say, you're just on the ballot last year. Why are we back?
Exactly.
You know, and so we had this spaghetti of levies. And so being able to extend them to kind of reduce the fatigue, but also keep the accountability.
Yeah, that would be great. My concern too is that one of the ways that we've been able to pass renewals successfully, more so than most urban school districts or many school districts, is that we are able to say it will not raise your taxes. Does that change now if we don't have the emergency and fix some, or, I mean,
I guess with fixed rate, we'll be going to the public and saying, this will lower your taxes. Is that right?
that's a possibility.
Possibility.
It does happen over time. I mean, that's one of the things is you do see, and it's not something that any individual taxpayer really sees because
yeah.
you're looking at huge amounts of properties. I mean, the number of parcels and stuff, but yes, over time, those levies bring in less and less money. Now, we do get some bump from the 20 mil floor. That's going to be a whole episode.
Okay.
I'm sure that's going to be a whole episode. That's a lot. But there's also provisions out there to modify the 20 mil floor, eliminate the 20 mil floor. I mean, there are a lot of things that are being discussed right now that dramatically alter the tax landscape in the state of Ohio. And I don't know that everyone understands.
It doesn't say, I mean, from what I've read and seen, I don't know if they got a plan B, right? I mean, you still got to fund the schools. How are they going to do it?
At the end of the day, the Ohio State Constitution says very clearly that the state needs to fund a system of public schools.
Yep.
Well, there's obviously some confusion in Columbus, and some, it shouldn't just be third grade reading for our kids.
Right.
Possibly some legislators need some third grade reading courses because they've been unable to read our Ohio Constitution for some years. Because the Ohio court has seen it and been able to read it, but the legislative body has had some problems at reading the Ohio Constitution.
I think this is a great segue to talk about kind of the upcoming series of town halls, and one of the things we want to talk about is the school funding series. So we've touched on some of these ideas already. It's way too much for an hour, and so my idea is that we do a series of 4 of these episodes. Each one stands individually, but each one we're going to take about an hour and dive into these things. And if you watch each of them, they build. So first thing we're going to talk about, as you mentioned, is how we got here. You know, as you said, there were some court cases. A lot of folks have heard of the DeRolf case. There's actually multiple DeRolf cases. That's the first thing people learn. That said Ohio's way of funding schools is unconstitutional. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the different legislative funding plans to address that. You know, the Cupp-Patterson, the Fair School Funding Plan. There's been different iterations as we go. You also can't talk about school funding in Ohio without talking about charter schools and vouchers.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically the expansion of the voucher system. Vouchers started very narrowly
For good reason and good purpose.
In the city of Cleveland. They have expanded, and over the last couple of years, they've expanded exponentially.
Well, now there's no means testing. There's no justification about providing choice for a family that may have only had one bad choice of a school. So now it is basically publicly subsidizing private schools. And that is one of the reasons that the CPS has been one of the litigants in the Vouchers for Ohio. And at least the initial decision at the county level in Franklin County benefited, and actually we won 3 of the 4 points that were made by the attorneys, but it has to go the next couple of levels, and that gets more problematic. But yes, right now, $1.2 billion is out of the line item that would be going to public schools and instead is going to private schools for this year and next year.
A couple of thoughts about that is many of the school districts in Ohio don't have a private school, especially in our rural and small towns. So the money is going to urban, expensive private schools.
Very good point.
The other thing I think that I look at it from a business point of view rather than a legal standpoint is return on investment. You're putting a lot of money into students who already are on a high trajectory for good student outcome. And so it's money that I think is wasted by our state government in investing. They're investing in students who don't need it. So it just gets wasted. It doesn't really change the education level in our state, and it doesn't really improve state outcomes. So there's very little ROI with that in my view.
I think that's really a key point, largely too, because most of those schools do not have the accountability that we have as public schools, whether it's the state report card or other means of measuring success. And so it's, again, no accountability.
No financial accountability either.
None.
I mean, I love the CFO taking it back to ROI.
There you go.
Yes, and that's the thing. And yeah, the lack of accountability is problematic. I mean, as a thought exercise, I meet fairly regularly with the other treasurers for the other urban school districts. So we're a lively bunch, but one of the thought exercises we talked about is what are the rules that we have to comply with that they don't, and then why? If it's worthwhile for us to do, is it not also worthwhile for the charter schools and the non-publics to do?
Of course, it's all public money. Of
And
course.
if it's not worthwhile for them, is it worthwhile for us to do? I mean, one of the things that we live with are a lot of mandates. We are a highly, highly, highly regulated industry, one of the most. And every year new mandates come from Columbus. Usually they don't always come with money. Mandates without money, and so the question, you have to ask the question: if only public schools have to do these things, we need to level the playing field? Either there are things that we don't need to do because they're only apply to us, or everyone needs to be held to the same standard.
And I'm not sure that the public is aware of the double standard. I honestly think the vast majority of the population honestly believes that all the schools, private, parochial, and public, are all being measured by the same. Now, they never see a report card with those names on it, but still, I think we need to really be clear about the double standard regarding accountability. I think that's critical.
This Sunday, there was an article in the Enquirer about the Don School, and they had a little sidebar about what charter schools are, and it ended up saying it's a public school and anyone can enroll. But they missed the point that not everybody gets accepted. I mean, that's a huge component. That's a private school activity, not a public school activity. So.
Yeah, I did see that article. That was an interesting article. I think the thing that article missed was the absolute effort that our staff did to give those kids an opportunity.
Oh yeah.
And I know, just working with the superintendent and her administration, how hard they worked to make sure those kids had a place to go.
Yeah.
Well,
having a school shut down in the middle of a school year is a scary, scary thing.
and it's shut down out of, very frankly, under scandalous conditions regarding the money. But here's the other piece. By the district here, Cincinnati Public, accepting many of those kids that we needed to serve, it will point out on our next graduation rate, we will probably go down because those kids will count against us because they will not have stayed within our district. So it was a good thing to do, but it had
It's got a cost.
it has a negative cost for us.
Yeah.
I mean, that is one of the things about the report card. One of several things is if the report card doesn't always measure what's happening, and I think it's we serve every student who comes to our doors. Not everyone has the same rules.
Right.
and so sometimes, I mean, other schools can make a business decision to say it costs more to educate this kid than we're getting. That is not something we do because we educate every kid that comes to us.
Mike, as you're looking for other topics, which you just mentioned, the state report card, on the back of that state report card are a half dozen or more items that are our financial stability or wellness. And maybe we could address some of those, or what that really means, how to read it, or how they compare us to school districts of 10,000 or more, or whatever. I think we need to look at that, because as we go to the public, that's one of the big communications to the public. And it's important for us to kind of
I
be
agree.
able to discuss that with folks. Because we forget about that because we're so preoccupied, rightfully so, with achievement and the instruction. But on the flip side of that report card, we're being compared and measured, and it might be important to share that with the public.
It's funny. I tell every training session I do why it's important, why the financial coding is important.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's the same as why it's important to get the kids' attendance in right. So our attendance measures are right. Why it's important to get the kids' grades in. Same thing on the financial side. Like this is all part of a report card. This is all what the public sees. And so sometimes some of the things our office does seems ticky tacky, and why does it take so long to get this request through? But that coding matters. You add all those transactions up. And it gives you a picture, and we want to make sure that's an accurate picture. And we do spend time. Well, that's a great topic, and we spend time pouring through what we submit to the state to make sure financially it lines up. So a couple other things that we'll talk about. So the history of school funding is going to be a big topic. Follow that up with property taxes. Everyone wants to talk about property taxes. The other side of that, though, is then the Fair School Funding Plan. And the fourth piece, I think, the key to this whole thing is tying it together. So we generally talk about those two subjects separately. Like we can talk about property taxes all day. We can talk about the Fair School Funding Plan all day. What people don't get, and this is a key thing, is that if your local aid goes up, your state aid most likely goes down. So people could rightly say, school should have a ton of money. My property taxes went way up. They don't see the other side, that the state aid went way down. And so from our perspective, from our revenue, to go back to revenue, our revenue is staying flat, but where that revenue is coming from is changing. And that's such an important conversation to have. So that'll be a whole session to talk about the interplay between those two things. And I've seen some really cool tables and graphs that we can start to educate folks with.
But the school fair funding plan wasn't used this past year at all, right?
They finally got around to using it.
Did they? Okay.
But it's an equation,
Yep.
right? And so to have an equation work right, you need to update both variables, and that's been our rub for the longest time.
Oops.
The longest time is one part of that is what's called your cost inputs. So they look at every school district in the state and they create averages. And what's the average teacher salary? What's the average benefit cost? And so in a perfect world, you update those every year, right? So you keep pace.
Right.
What they did is they left those back to 2022 values, but they went ahead and updated our district wealth side of the equation. So the district wealth side of the equation.
So it's heads I win, tails you lose.
Exactly.
Well, the other thing is that to me, when you describe that too, also the state average, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, life in the big city costs a lot more than it does out in the country. So, the average only makes it tougher for the cities.
Yeah, there is obviously a fundamental difference between how much we pay in a city like Cincinnati, where we're surrounded by our suburbs. There's a market for all of our professionals.
Yeah.
If you go a couple hours east, you would see dramatically
Different market.
Different
You got it.
market. Just
Yep.
the costs are different, and
Yep.
so a statewide average does not really reflect that. You're right. There's not a, like, for example, you think about like when you travel, the IRS has a per diem rate, right? That they set for every city, you know, and if you travel to Des Moines, Iowa, your per diem is less than if you travel to New York City.
Yep,
You know, the state doesn't have something like that in their funding formula. The whole state's kind of equally weighted.
right. Good point. Mike, you know everything. This is great.
I know a little bit, and one of
know
the
enough.
things,
You know a lot.
yeah, I've learned a lot. I will say that.
Yeah,
Yeah, one of the things that we want to do, you know, is bring in people who know more than me,
yeah, sure.
and so we'll still start to see more guests here that bring in those points, and maybe even some people that disagree with us.
Sure.
That's great.
That's great.
You know, a little lively debate. Tends
Sure.
People, I know there are plenty of people who have very different viewpoints about these things.
Right.
But it's important to have that marketplace of ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rob, if you'll hit the next slide when you get a chance. So some other topics we have on the agenda, and these could change, and we're looking at, you know, school funding will get us through the winter, through the depths of the winter. March 4th is one I really want to do. It's going to be CPS by the numbers.
Oh,
I
gracious.
think a lot of times, like, you don't realize running CPS is like running a small city. And-
So
and
is this on the expense side?
on the expense side.
Yeah, okay.
And we'll bring in some folks who do some really wild things, and we can talk about, you know, how many meals do we serve? How many miles do we drive? Like when you start to look at those numbers, it is kind of staggering, the size and the scope of the operation that we do here.
Right?
So one that I'm happy about is doing business with the district. So this has been a topic I've tried to get on the agenda as assistant treasurer for a couple of years, and now that it's my agenda, I guess I
Yeah.
get to
Get
do
to.
it, right?
Get it off.
Right. So hopefully, I'm going to record this for our vendors, but just some of the things that people don't know if you're working with any government, but a school district in particular. You know, people don't understand our bidding rules and those sort of things. And so,
That's right.
you know, people want to walk in and be like, okay, let's go. Wait, we have a bidding rule. You know, people don't understand that, you know, any contract under, you know, over $50,000, I have to bring to you for approval.
Yep.
You know, people don't understand that, you know, we redo our purchase orders every year. You know, these are things that aren't things that, you know, you deal with as much in the private sector,
Right.
but they're definitely things that I think our vendors need to be aware of, and just in general, if you want to sell to the district, you know, here's some things to be knowledgeable about.
Well, just this past, last week, I think, in policy committee, a would-be vendor brought an issue, and one of the board members had heard this, and about working with us and the demands that we do make regarding risk and insurance and whatever, is to, can a vendor be too small to do business with us? Or what can we do to encourage not only a variety of vendors, but also the smaller vendor who's trying to get a way to service and our kids. So it is an ongoing issue, for sure. It'd be great to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we try to increase that pool of vendors. You know,
I
but
mean, you have very
and
recently,
also-
a
and also-
tremendous number have been increased.
yeah,
And also highlighting that it's public knowledge once they have a contract. And, you know,
yeah. I mean, that is interesting for people who haven't done.
Yep.
People haven't done a contract to know that. Yeah, that's a records request, and we get, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a year. You know, we'll get a records request for all of our contracts, all of our purchase orders, and they're just companies that want to market. You know, so they want to do some marketing or do some assistance of folks who work. So they want to know who works with us.
yeah,
But it is interesting that everything we do is public record. pretty much.
Absolutely.
yeah,
It is a wide, I mean, I've worked in the public sector for a long time, but it can be kind of jarring to folks that realize that everything we do, every email, every document can be requested and viewed by the public.
Yeah.
So I think in May, we'll talk about school budgets. We might move that one earlier, depending on how the budget process is. But we'll start getting the questions about that.
yeah. Well, by May, we'll be far enough along to have something that's substantial to talk about with the process that's gone on, how we got to that point.
Yeah, it's nice to talk in more specifics and less
Yeah,
generalities.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I would also put a plug in, I don't have the dates, but the superintendent and I are gonna be doing some budget listening sessions next month,
Oh,
for the public. We'll get those published out there,
virtual or in person or,
both,
oh, okay,
both, mix of both, so.
great.
So I don't have the dates on top of my head, but we'll make sure people know about that. So chance for folks to come in who have a concern or want to make some comments or suggestions about our budgeting thing. I did these years ago, and they are kind of fascinating
Great.
as people really latch on to it. And usually people walk out, like, I had no idea. I had no idea this was this complex. I had no idea why this was this way. But we also get some good feedback,
Sure.
good ideas.
Sure.
It's kind
It's their money.
Yeah, it's their money. Using the knowledge of the crowd is a good thing. And then the final one's kind of a fun one in June, and that's the Can We Do This? So we'll talk about the laws, the rules, the audits, all those fun things. Maybe it should be, why can't I do this?
Maybe, I think the word it that way, I think that would be good.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time as assistant treasurer in the why can't I do this? And
Answering that. Huh?
yes, why can't I do this? Well, it's because
How many times are we, excuse me, how many times are we audited in a year? I mean, would you, on average?
would put the number above 20.
Okay,
We are in the middle of our big fiscal audit. Auditor State is doing it this year, so they were on site yesterday. Had a lovely time working with them, and they just ask for a ton of data, which is what they should do,
Yeah,
and they do their thing. But then, there's a separate review of the federal stuff, or federal funds.
Right.
There's on-site monitoring by monitoring by our state support team. That's then monitored by the federal team, or it was. I don't know if those people still exist in the Department of Education, but if they do, they'll monitor us.
is the reason that it's the state auditing us instead of a hired auditor, or how does that work?
So the state Auditor State has a duty to audit pretty much every government entity in the state of Ohio.
Okay,
As you can imagine, every township, city, county.
yes,
For some of the larger clients, they'll basically bid it out to external firm.
oh, okay,
So you guys have met with Plattenberg. We've had
Right.
Plattenberg for
yeah,
last several years.
Right.
But from time to time, the state will come back and say, no, we need to do it. You don't.
Sort
you
of
don't-
on a rotation, I
Yeah,
think.
there's a rotation.
okay, good. I don't need to be too suspicious or
No,
anything.
no,
No,
no.
no.
Okay,
It's
good.
part of
You
their,
know me.
It's part of their general protocol.
You
I
know
mean-
me, I'm a little cynical about all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, one of the general protocols is you don't want to get too close to your auditors.
That
Well,
makes,
I mean,
that
I
makes
think
sense.
There's some truth in that.
Yes,
That makes sense.
go look at the Enron story.
Sure.
Oh, my.
That was an example of where the
Yep.
audit firm got too close to the business. And
Yeah. It was the end of Arthur Anderson.
yes, the end of Arthur Anderson. So I understand why they do it. It's,
Sure.
and they have been really great to work with.
Sure.
But it's like learn to dance with someone new,
Yeah.
right?
Good analogy.
It's a whole new team of people.
It's a whole new team of
Do
people.
they get to use the work papers of Plattenberg, or do they have to
They
build?
do.
They
They-
do.
they do.
Okay,
They
so they get some knowledge transfer.
Yeah, they've also used some of the stuff that our internal audit
Oh, good.
auditors
Excellent.
has done, which is good. So they've internal audit's done a good job of
They've-
looking
they-
at a lot of these things.
They
and so
probably
they're
have
like-
some metrics on their efficiency, I imagine.
Yeah, and so they're send us your work papers, and they do, and then that makes our life everyone easy. So
I think one thing that is story that's told in the public is how many clean audits we've had for so many years. I mean, that's an amazing number. And, yeah, we
Knock
got to
on wood,
keep
but
it
we
going.
yeah.
But I think that's the kind of thing that should give the public a lot of assurance and reassurance about our district. We may not have the money we need, but what we have is we track it accurately. And that's really a very good message.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the first things I say in training is you need to treat the district's money like your own.
Yeah,
Like what we are is our reputation.
yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, we've had years of clean audits. We have plaques on the wall. It looks
Yeah.
nice. We've had years of awards for our financial reporting.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's another thing that I think we should be very proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And we are.
And we are proud of that. Absolutely.
So yeah, Mike, how about we do a little quick reminder of how to participate in asking questions for the wonderful people watching on Facebook. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the chat, and we're going to share them here with the panel and our wonderful board members and Treasurer Mike. So please feel free to, again, share that with the group. We'd greatly appreciate it. Mike, we do have a great preschool program here at Cincinnati Public Schools. And we have a pretty big thing coming up in November, the levy. But the levy's not just about preschool. Can you talk about a little bit of what all this levy that's coming up covers for the district?
Sure, be happy to. So yes, we have a levy coming up in November. It is issue 28 on your ballot, and it is, as we talked about, this is a fixed sum levy. The total is $48 million a year it brings in for the district. And we actually split that money. So 15 million of that is dedicated to preschool expansion. And out of that 15, we work with a group called Cincinnati Preschool Promise to divide those funds. And so some of it funds CPS preschool classrooms and those students, and some of it funds Preschool Promise providers, tuition assistance, those sort of things. So that's 15 out of the 48. The other 33 just goes into the district's general fund used for general operations. So, things like making sure our neighborhood schools are strong, making sure, our career tech programs and workforce readiness programs are strong. Trying to think what else would we say about it?
Well, I think it might be, I always like the idea that the money between the CPS preschools and the preschool promise preschools is about 50-50. I think, correct? Roughly.
It works out that way.
Yeah.
I mean, some years it's a little more,
sure.
But for the most part, the key is, thousands of kids are getting quality preschool.
Right.
That probably wouldn't if this didn't exist.
Right.
Yeah, I think the preschool piece of it is so important over these years that this has been in existence, this public-private partnership. We've been able to educate somewhere between 12 and 13,000 little people in preschool. And it makes a difference. As a matter of fact, I think we saw some of the results. Our kindergarten readiness is very good compared to many of the other urbans, and more particularly on the new state report card, we, among the urbans, were first in early literacy. And some of that is attributable certainly to preschool education, both in the public and the private sector as they join CPS in later years. So it's nobody in the state has more preschool than Cincinnati Public. We have, I think it's 130 some classes that are preschool classes, and then they have a number of private providers. So we do it quite well. As a matter of fact, recently, people have been lauding the value of having somebody like John Pepper be a part of it, and he was very much a part of it, as were business people all over the nation.
Correct.
This was a national movement, and very frankly, of the major districts that did this, I think we're among the leaders in doing it so well and maintaining that great partnership.
I think in the last report that we got was that the Cincinnati Public side of the preschool, all the classrooms are certified.
Yes.
Certified classrooms, and that's, it demonstrates that the teachers are very prepared and trained. I think the other thing, I talked to the superintendent about this a while back, but I think she's got data that shows that the kids who have preschool do very well when it comes to third grade reading. It carries through. So it is making an impact on the long-term getting kids ready to learning by reading rather than learning to read.
Yeah, I think it's such a good setting the foundation for school, and just getting those basics in preschool. So when they show up to kindergarten, they're hitting the ground running.
And the majority of the money is really spent in subsidizing preschool for young people that would not probably have had the opportunity or could not necessarily have afforded tuition. So it's for our 3-year-olds and our 4-year-olds, it's a great opportunity, and I think has been of great service to the families that want their kids to get a bit of a head start.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think as a district, invested heavily in preschool for a long time. And yeah, a lot of this money goes for tuition assistance, but we've also over time pulled down a lot of other funds.
right.
We leverage, Head Start, we leverage federal Title I money, we leverage, some state grants. We're actually one of the schools that did the state full day pilots. We filled all those seats. It was the thing. Can you fill these seats? And we have.
Yeah, because the preschool piece was it's the last dollar in. So we're supposed to have exhausted every other means that we have before we go to those dollars. And I think that you all have done a great job, because that really has been a financial effort on the treasurer's part and our superintendents, and certainly Director Vera Brooks, who's been the director of early childhood. It's really remarkable, and it's expanding.
Yeah, I think it's been a very successful program. And so this year's renewal is to go for 10 years. And yeah, so I'm trying to think, 10 years, same rate, same 48 million. It's a renewal. So, the decision was made to not go for an increase, but to keep working with the resources we have.
Great, Mike. We do have a comment. I'm loving the new platform, Money Matters with Mike. Love the idea of incorporating different guests into the platform to discuss money matters. Adrian Jackson, we appreciate your comment. Again, if anyone else has any questions, they'll drop us a message. So we appreciate it. Hey, Mike, we talk about the general fund a little bit, right? And it's so important. We spend a lot of time talking about federal funding, state funding, but why is the general fund so important, and how is the general fund funded?
Those are great questions. So I think the key is it's the general fund, which means it goes for most of our general expenses, and that's an important thing. So when we talk about federal funds, they're highly regulated and they're fairly controlled to what you can do. The general fund pays for everything from the lights in here to the water bill to teacher salaries to just a myriad of things. General fund comes really from two main sources, and the two we've talked about. So it's your tax revenue, and then it's your state aid, and so those two come together, and that becomes your general fund. And there's some other things as well, money we get from tax abatements and those sort of things, interest income, some reimbursements, E-rate, Medicaid reimbursements, but all that becomes into what's called the general fund. And that is really the basis for our budget and the basis for our spending. So we look at that. That's what our forecast is based on. And that's kind of how we start our spending plan. And then other funds are kind of the icing or the sprinkles, right? So we sprinkle in some federal grants, sprinkle in some local grants, we'll sprinkle in, what the foundation's going to do for us. And all that kind of builds, the full cake.
But the district is mostly funded, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, by our local community.
Yes, district is mostly funded by our local community. When we do the 5-year forecast presentation on Monday, you'll see we have a nice little donut chart.
3 year.
I think
3-year. I'm sorry, it's not even the 3-year though. It's the budget and 3-year forecast.
Oh my.
Yes.
Okay.
It just rolled.
So it's 4.
So 4. Yeah, the 5-year forecast rolled like they didn't understand alliteration.
I
Right?
gotcha. I
Right,
gotcha.
5 forecast.
so. The last chart I looked at, I remember seeing real estate taxes, personal property taxes, and then there's a personal allocation of personal property taxes. Those three things came up pretty close to 60% of the total general fund.
Yeah. So when you look at the donut, you'll see it's like
Yeah.
50-some%.
Yeah.
But and I've done this before. If you go beyond the stacked donut, one of the things that's listed under state aid is the state share of property taxes. This is great. So if you're a taxpayer, a property owner, and you get a homestead, you get the homestead exemption, right? The state makes us whole for that. So that shows as state aid, but really it's based on our property taxes. So that's based on the other kind of hidden one in there is you'll see our other sources of income is pretty high. Our other sources of revenue is higher than you would expect.
Yeah,
What's buried in there are the TIF payments from the cities that we have. So those are tax
That's
abatements,
Taxes.
and they're paying us a part of that property taxes.
yeah,
And then also the commercial reinvestment area pay bills that we bill out to properties to get back, which is also property taxes.
Taxes,
So
yeah.
really, the pie is really, the local is much closer to 70, 75%.
percent.
Wow.
Wow.
It's probably right around 70 or so at this point.
Well, you might have to have two pies, one that you do now and one that has all those exceptions pulled into it, the property tax category.
Yeah.
We'll expect animation with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Like a
Animated, yeah.
morphing pie. The pie that grows. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we are a locally funded entity, and not all of the urbans are like that. That's another thing to point out. And if that's where you were going, but
That's exactly where I was going. When you compare us with the other major urbans, we are very different. And actually, the state says as well that we're a wealthy district, even though we have, I think, second only to Detroit and Cleveland regarding poverty rate.
Right.
But we're a wealthy district, like Wyoming is a wealthy district, and Cincinnati is classified. So that changes how they deal with us, and the burden on our local folks. When we even go back to the facilities master plan, which was 1.7 billion, as I've now been told, not 1.2 billion. 78% of that was locally funded, and that's remarkable. It was remarkable. Such generosity. We are people care about CPS, and everybody needs to know CPS is bigger than the city of Cincinnati.
Right, bigger
So there's
budget.
any number of bigger budget than the city, and geographically, it's more of a metropolitan district even than an urban district.
Right.
yeah, I mean, we definitely expand outside the city.
Not to mention, we've gotten more enrollment than Cleveland now.
Wow.
So we're second only to Columbus.
Yeah,
I'm doing something right.
Yeah,
Or
and
it's
we-
Cleveland's doing something wrong, I don't know.
I don't know. We continue. I mean, we continue to
Right.
grow. We continue. I mean, going back.
The charter schools are more prevalent in Columbus and Cleveland than they are here.
Are they?
Yeah,
But I bet the parochial system is stronger here.
it is.
Than it is in Columbus and
Yeah,
Cleveland.
Southwest Ohio's parochial system is the fifth largest in the United States.
And I'm glad for it, because the wealth and the health of this city really is not just about CPS, but it has been about our very strong parochial system, K-12. I mean, we are partners in that way, but it's pretty interesting to compare
Yeah.
the three, the three C's, so to speak.
Yeah, they're very different when you get under the hood and look at the details.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
different.
if,
That's
you,
right.
if you look at the percentage of state share that Cleveland gets
Oh,
versus
my.
Cincinnati, I mean, it's like flipping your pie chart the other
Yeah.
way, and so we're constantly, I think, asking and our community for support, and we
Yeah.
just have to. It's just the world we live in, and we have
right.
to
Yeah.
recognize it. And
I have an example of what it looks like under the hood. I looked up, there's a cluster of parochial schools called SICE, which it's Catholic inner city schools. And you go to their financials, and you know that they're receiving voucher money, or not voucher money. Yeah, I guess they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, voucher money. But in their financial statement, they just have one revenue line. It just says contributions. They don't separate out what's voucher and what's a real donation and that sort of thing. So, that's where some financial transparency would be more helpful, I think, for them to have to be more accountable. But,
I think you're right.
Rob, do we have more questions from the?
Yeah, Mike, can you talk to us a little bit about the update on the property tax working group and what impact that is the decision making for that could make for the district itself?
That's a great question. So they released yesterday. Yesterday they released their final report. They had 20 recommendations in there, and we should give them credit. Former board member and former state senator Bill Seitz was the co-chair of that. We also had our local commissioner, Mrs. Driehaus, was one of the members. So we were well represented. So and we had an opportunity to talk with the two of them as well through the process. What I think high level the overall thing was they tried to take some of the vetoes or some of the things in the bill that got vetoed and make them a little more acceptable. Try to get a little broader. Try to get a broader group. Like one thing we haven't talked about today is the idea of capping how much money a school district can carry over. So this has been a very popular thing, and it started at 30%, and then it went to 50%, and the property tax working group said, "How about 100%?" So you can carry over 100% of the revenue you get in a year. And I think there are some people who are concerned that school districts are just basically stockpiling cash. They're stockpiling cash not to spend. That is not a problem that CPS has. I will say that. I mean, I can see that side of it. I mean, 100% is more reasonable than 50. I will say some of it's an accounting thing. To look at why are you stockpiling money? Are you going to build something? A lot of these small school districts aren't going to go out for bonds. They might want to stockpile the money to make a major capital purchase. But there's some accounting about that. You can create a permanent improvement fund. You can put the money in that fund. It'll sit there. So that's one example. Like another example they talked about is there's a proposal for the county budget commissions. So each county has a budget commission. It's the prosecutor, the auditor, and the treasurer, I believe. Trying to remember this. Yeah, county treasurer, county auditor, county prosecutor. And generally they review everyone's budgets that come in. We send them a tax budget. They can just make sure things are done right. Proposal is to allow them to unilaterally reduce property tax rates. So the three of them could get together in a room and say, Cincinnati Public Schools is collecting way too much money. We're going to reduce their property tax rates because they're spending way too much money. And that obviously is a terrifying thing for any school district because you can't plan for that, you can't forecast for that. So the property tax working group had some recommendations about when that could happen. So it couldn't happen in the first 5 years of a new levy, or it couldn't happen the first 2 years after renewal. And so they just tried to kind of soften a lot of those recommendations to make them more agreeable to folks. Making sure the school districts have an opportunity to come and present their case, and explain in public why, reducing your collection rates aren't there. The other piece that we need to talk about probably that will come out of this is House Bill 186. And so House Bill 186 is one of the property tax reform proposals. It's probably has the most steam now. I would say it has the most steam now, bless you. It's the most popular now. And what it does is for districts on the 20 mil floor like us, when there's a reappraisal or a value update, it's gonna look at how much property values increased, and then it's gonna look at inflation over the same time period. And it's gonna limit the amount of money the amount of additional money we would get to that inflationary level. So the idea behind it is to keep, we've seen some really high property value increases. The last set of updates was in the 30% range. And so the idea is just to tamp that down so that school districts don't get a windfall. Now, the things I haven't seen about that is, are they also going to change the state funding formula? Because it's one thing to say you get less property taxes, but if they're going to plug those same values into the funding formula, then we're going to get even less state aid. Right? So
I wouldn't put any money on it, Mike.
Just listening to you and knowing all these little things could be chipping away at us, it's annoying because I believe the most important thing we do is educate our children in this state. And instead of chipping away and being skimpy about it, if they really wanted us to make Ohio a fantastic state, we should be funding education generously. And, instead of chipping away at it, that's just a thought that I had in my head as I was listening to you. It's the most important thing we do is get these kids educated. So,
I mean, everyone should have a stake in education.
Excellent.
Excellent. Yes, every person has a stake in education.
Yep.
And, you know, even if your kids are grown and out the door, you have a stake in that next generation. You know,
Absolutely.
you've got to think those kids that are sitting in our schools today are going to be your employees in a year. They're going to be people you work with. They're going to be your coworkers. They're going to be the people who buy houses next to you, the people who live in your community, the people who go vote with you.
they might just be your caregivers in the nursing home.
They could be your caregivers in the nursing home. So it's in everyone's interest to have a strong education.
Yep.
That prepares people, that prepares young people to go out and take over to be that next generation that takes the mantle
Right.
from us and advances our communities.
Well, and
Well said.
I would say for sure that until recently, in the last decade or so, that was the priority. That was what people understood. That's how levies got passed, even though there's only 20% of the people in this district that have a direct relationship with CPS. They'll vote for it because they understand it from an economic development and also from taking care of our kids. I mean, and the well-being of the whole community. But something has changed in the attitude, and we have to figure out what happened and kind of rebirth, if you will, that more positive, upbeat, holistic approach to education for our folks. We're fortunate in this district to have great partnerships and great public support.
We are.
We really are, and we're the envy of many of the urbans because of it. But still, we have to nurture that that goodwill every chance we get.
I mean,
Amen.
Amen. Well said. It's just so important we tell our story.
And that's
And
what we
not-
have to do better, which is why this is so important, what you're doing.
Yeah,
This is
let
all
it,
part of
not
it.
let it be told for you, but we have
That's
to tell
right.
our story. Do we have any more questions, Rob, or are we?
No, I think it's about time for us to wrap up. Mike, I do want to mention that that the students from the Odell Owen Center are going to be working on some bumpers for you, and they're very excited to make some jingles and bumpers for you. So we appreciate Mr. Anthony's class doing that. One of the students went in and he's like, "Oh, we got this. We're good. We're good." So that's going to be really exciting. But no, we appreciate everyone's grace with the technology as we started this venture. And Mike, anything else you want to throw in there before we go for the evening?
Well, I do want to start by thanking you and the tech team for setting this up. I know doing it the first time is kind of daunting task, but things came out really great. Love the fact we can use some students. You know, love the fact a lot of this equipment, you know, is gonna be turned around and used by students. You know, we've got some student podcasts out there in the district, and just giving people opportunities to do new things. And very appreciative of the board members tonight
Sure.
for their time, and looking forward to seeing folks again day after the election, November 5th.
Yeah.
And we're gonna take a dive into the history of school funding in Ohio.
Oh, that'll be great.
Maybe we'll go back to the Northwest Ordinance. I know
I'm always ready.
Miss Bolton could be
I
our,
personally remember the Northwest Ordinance 1787, but you'll get a fast review of it, I'm sure.
she could be our expert in the Northwest Ordinance.
That's
but-
about it.
but we're excited to talk about how we got to where we are today.
Yes.
So thank you for tuning in tonight, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, and you're listening to Money Matters with Mike.